Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. It's the DEX show within a show, Reality Bytes. Got a full house today as well. We've got Tim in the building, back from 7 weeks of professional travel. Tim, oh my goodness! And now you've come down with a cold, right? Inevitable, sir.
I'm 7 weeks and I'm about ready to drop dead, and I got a little head cold, so it's all good.
He's sharing his last breaths with us, ladies and gentlemen. We're very, very fortunate.
I'm on my deathbed.
And we've also got the full panel. We've got Sean, hi Sean, Dina, hi Dina, Oriana, hi Oriana, Megan, hi Megan, and we've got a bit of a light topic today. The thing is, we had for those who listened to the last Reality Bytes interview with Sergio Miles, it was a career special. Sergio shared his thoughts on sort of successful career transitions between IT ops and software vendors, and he had a lot of, I think, really stirring words. And we got a really, really fantastic response from it. And we don't often talk about, or haven't often talked about, the tech career here on the DEX Show or Reality Bytes. So we thought, in the Reality Bytes chat, Sean came up with the idea of discussing sort of successful IT career longevity, which I think all of us can point to some extent or another, somewhat dependent upon things like age. You know, the older some of us get, the longer those career spans tend to look. Now you thought I was going to make a joke. I would never, Tim. I would never. Not with you, with your cold and your long trip. No, sir. No, sir. But we thought we would talk about our anecdotes as in our tech careers. We would think about the learnings from them. We would think about what it takes to be successful as an employee or indeed an employer. So we'll go to you, Sean, first of all, because you did bring us this idea, as you so often do. And one of the things it got when I was thinking about it earlier this week, I was like, well, there's this sort of parallelism with DEX, right? Because a fundamental sort of raison d'etre of digital employee experience is to help employers retain talent, to help keep employees productive and therefore satisfied, to reduce employee churn. What's your sense of the picture of the broader technology industry at the moment in terms of employee retention, and in terms of, obviously we all feel that career lifespans are getting a lot shorter? Why do you think that is, and what have you culled from your own observations and experiences that shed light on that?
Big question. Way to start it. I do, I guess for the industry as a whole, it sounds a little silly, but I do feel like the product that you have that you're selling, whether it's like a tangible product or it's software, it does need to evolve, and that can have a knock-on effect for your employees. So I feel like with our employer, with NextThink, that tends to happen every year, which presents new challenges and opportunities, and it kind of makes it fun because you're, learning as you go, and it's almost like every year it's a different company, but it can't be so drastic that it feels entirely different. And I think that's probably the case then for those folks who feel like they can't, or they don't want to stay in a particular place for more than a year or two. Is probably because, either the products that they're putting out are just boring and they're not evolving with them. They're not presenting fun challenges for people to grow their careers. And I think that's probably the main driver for folks to want to go elsewhere and seek different employment.
That's an interesting point. I mean, I think makes me think of my experience. Sean and I are both marketeers, and one of the things about working in startups in particular is startups are often kind of completely reforming what their technology does. They've got a solution, they've got some software, and they often completely turn 180 degrees and reposition it almost entirely. And that can keep you a little too busy as a marketeer when you have like too fluid an organization. But I do feel that a company like NextThink is always updating. It's very, very dynamic, but there's a vein of consistency, right, Sean? Like it's not a completely different company from one year to the next. There's just enough change to keep it interesting and keep it challenging. Yeah, I completely concur. And I said I wasn't going to make any jokes, Tim, but when it comes to longevity in the tech career, we've got to go to you, my friend. We've got to go to you. But for most of us, I think, on the panel, Tim, our longest career stints have been at NextThink, but yours would take some beating, I believe, sir. You have a longer stretch prior to your NextThink life, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting too. My former coworkers at Hartford, I have some friends that are still there after 40 years, double my career, which is amazing to me. Why, right? Retire, go enjoy your life. But yeah, I've only changed jobs twice. I had 3 jobs in my life, and I changed for opportunity, career growth, technology change, pay change. But yeah, 20 years at Hartford, and I think it's interesting to look back at the 20 years in that one role, and there's almost micro careers throughout the whole time. Projects change, leaders change, businesses change, and to look at that lifespan at one place as an equal time as NextThink in its entirety. So it's definitely interesting retrospective to look back and kind of think about why I stayed that long and think about some of the things that we did.
I mean, I've got to ask, I mean, going from a job, Tim, after 20 years to a new company, did you feel a lot of anxiety about that shift? I would have been sleepless nights leading up to that job, man.
It wasn't really anxiety. It was more the excitement of change, right? You guys were just talking about how startups morph and change and modify. Hartford's over 200 years old. It's not changing. So things do become stagnant and repetitive. Projects come and go, but I was really looking for that change. I was looking for something that would get me reinvigorated in my technology career. And I guess I didn't have the anxiety over joining essentially a sales organization because I'd been selling internally my whole career. In order to get any technology in, you have to sell it inside. And I wasn't too concerned about that. So, no, it was more excitement about the change and the opportunity.
And how long in NextThink now, Tim? Remind me.
8.5. So I had 8 years at Digital Equipment, then 20 at Hartford, and now in the fall it'll be 9 years.
That's amazing. And Dina, however, is biting at your heels. Dina, your 7th year as a NextThinker.
Yes, so this June is going to be my 7th year, and echoing what Sean was saying earlier, I have been changing my careers within, or my jobs within NextThink every second year or a year and a half in the last 7 years within NextThink. So it's been exciting. It is still exciting. There is no boring day as long as the product is evolving, and it keeps on evolving. So I remember starting to use the product as a customer 9 years ago. It's completely different in a very amazing way, where now you have all of the dreams and hopes. Oh, I wish it could do this, it could do that. Now you can do all of it, and all the wishes are actually happening. And now with Infinity, you have more and more to come. So there is no one boring day, whether you're delivering the product or using the product in the background. So it keeps on evolving, and I think this helps when you're staying for the job or or in the same company. And this is the longest I have stayed in a company before, and it's the people that makes you stay, alongside, of course, the product at the end of the day.
I mean, it's interesting that we spoke to Sergius last week. We had heard from Tim, heard from yourself, and you're by far not the only NextThinkers who went from users of a product, customers effectively, to NextThinkers. What's that transition? What was that transition like for you, Dina? And what is the key to make that transition successfully in your?
Looking at things from a different perspective. So I'll go back to the first slogan that I started to see with NextThink. It was change your perspective. And if you put that at heart, this has been the most successful thing at using the product, whether I was a customer on the NextThink side or giving some partners trainings or enablement, empowerment, etc. So looking at the product from different perspectives has been the most powerful, and actually looking at actionable data. So you don't just have an enormous amount of data that keeps on getting displayed on dashboards or however we want to display it with the NextThink, but actually operationalizing this data and utilizing it in real life. So finding a problem, do the fix, monitor it as you go forward, avoid doing it in the future. So moving from the incident management to the problems, etc., etc. All of this gives a lot of power and a lot of value. So at the end of the day, it is value that drives the transition and success. And this has been one of the things, and is still one of the things, that makes me super excited in the morning to wake up and find new challenges to fix. It's the value that we keep on adding to everybody's lives, whether it's directly impacting their organization at the customer side or impacting them personally. And I have heard and seen multiple champions of NextThink evolve in their careers within their current employers, or even move between companies, just because of how successful they have been demonstrating how to use NextThink to its fullest capabilities.
Let us tell the listeners that if you think Dina's just being nice about NextThink, she says the same thing in the chat.
It's a true fact. So it's facts and figures. That's mostly my argument that generally wins when we're arguing with customers. I don't see this, I don't see that, but it's the facts and figures. If you have the data and KPIs behind it, and I do have it, so.
Ariana, on the other hand, did not transition from using NextThink. As far as I know, Ariana, you correct me if I'm wrong, you transitioned from, as we know, being a gamer into NextThink, because that was the technology you were most using. But I'm not wrong, am I? You weren't secretly.
Not quite, not quite. I mean, before next month, I was at a cybersecurity company doing user experience research. So I have definitely found my niche in doing UX research at companies that have highly complex products. And it's for that exact reason that everyone mentions. When you're working on these extremely technical types of software, it's not a solved problem. There's always questions of how can we make computer information literate to human brains? And that's a really interesting problem. I'm really enjoying working on it. I've really enjoyed working at it at different organizations that have different approaches to the problem. And I also think that it means that there's constant evolution that keeps things novel and interesting and exciting to learn about and challenging to work on. So I definitely value that part.
Interested in your perspective on the question, Oriana, of the disappearing or the shrinking career in general, because at the moment we do hear and see that organizations want to retain more talent longer. It's not just that the time people spend at companies is shrinking because they're not necessarily wanted. There are a number of factors at play. And what's your overall perspective on this phenomenon? And how important do you think it is that we have these? I know you were saying in the chat, this is your longest stint, right? 4 years now as a next thinker. So you found somewhere you feel, I hope, relatively at home. And how important is that to you? And how important is that in general?
Yeah, I'm usually a fairly optimistic person, but I do think that in this case, I'm a little bit cynical. I don't know that organizations do necessarily want to retain employees longer in many cases. I think what they want is to really have a lot of agency over that. And we see that in both policies in the US, right? I mean, most of the US is at will, and in the industry trends at large, right? There have been both massive layoffs and massive hiring sprees over and over again in tech. So I think it is a little bit more complicated than companies do or don't want to retain employees. I do think that there's a certain amount of the norms have changed. And I personally really like stability, longevity. I chose my career. I chose to get a master's degree in my field because I wanted to have a very specific focus. And I really enjoy working with a team of people who have really focused on a particular area for a while. I think it's one of the things that I enjoy a lot about NextThink is so many people who go really deep. And I think that that's one of the advantages of longevity is you can go really deep. But I do think that, especially when I talk to my peers of different generations in the industry in similar roles, our experiences have been very, very different. And there isn't a guarantee of stability the way that there has been in the past. So I think there is a cultural factor in tech as a whole where that stability isn't necessarily a guarantee. It's very hard to count on that, which is a shame because I like I said, I value it a lot, and I get very attached to the product that I'm working on. So that's also my personal preference. I think there's a give and take and a cultural shift, and there are definitely advantages and disadvantages on both sides. But I am a big fan of building really connected teams, and I think that that requires some amount of investment and trust, and that organizations know that. So I think they're trying to balance that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, that expectation has definitely shifted. And then you have the continental differences as well, right? Like US sort of employment law, as Oriana was just alluding to, is so radically different to European employment law. And you find, as a consequence, more longevity in a lot of European careers. Like you just talk to next thinkers who have been, without any diminishment of their passion and enthusiasm, have been working sometimes for decades on this technology, and it's deep in them, that attachment to the organization, that attachment to the technology, and that is to an extent dictated by the conditions that companies can't just let people go or be too footloose in who they hire and fire. Megan, I'm interested in this. I think you probably got a lot to say about a couple of these themes, and please say whatever occurs to you. But also, what sort of stands out to me is when you joined us from the charity sector, so you kind of joined the tech sector with pretty fresh eyes. And if you want to kick off whatever your takes are with what the tech sector looked like, coming to it afresh, I think that'd be a really interesting way to start off.
Okay. Yeah, I can touch on that. I first want to kind of react to what Tim was just saying about the portfolio career, because I think this is an interesting moment where I've seen the same thing, Tim. People saying like, "Oh, the portfolio career," and you'll see jokes and commentary online about how Gen Z, the youngest generation, job hops all the time because they can increase their earning potential, at least in the United States, by job hopping all the time. You get the biggest bump in your salary by job hopping, and that has become sort of the standard wisdom. Is like after whatever period of time you deem appropriate, then you job hop to increase your earning potential and build your portfolio career. But I think a lot of the conversations I see about that lack the psychological influence of that lack of stability in your career. I do think that there's a psychological toll to constantly having to put yourself into the market and constantly having to put yourself out there. I mean, the job interview process over the course of my career, which is, I guess I entered the working world in 2011, so 13 years. I feel like the interview process has just gotten more and more extreme. I will say to interview at Nextthink actually wasn't very extreme, but I've had other experiences with other companies where they just really put you through the ringer. And so it's this really sort of dehumanizing process. And so if you are thinking about job hopping every year, you're putting yourself through a really dehumanizing process every year in pursuit of, I guess, more wealth and more experiences. I don't know. I think there's a psychological impact to that that I just don't see discussed as often as, I don't know, people are saying like, oh yeah, now you're building a portfolio career. So that one kind of stuck out to me. Not that build a portfolio career if that's what you want, get as much money as you want if that's what you want out of your career. But, I think we are losing something where we lose that trust and that stability. And that kind of segues into, my experience coming from the charity sector. So the reason that I left the charity sector actually was, we don't call it the charity sector in the United States, but nonprofit world, to speak American. The reason I left the nonprofit sector was because I got laid off. I had my career has been kind of crazy. I'd always worked for like a year. I job hopped a lot, so I guess I'm speaking from experience with the psychological toll. But I would take year-long contracts at these nonprofits abroad, and then they can't lay you off. It's a different employment law, as you were saying, Tom. So I would work for a year with a contract, and then the contract would be up, and either they would offer to renew or I would decide to go somewhere else. And then I moved back to the United States a few years ago and got a job with a nonprofit here that felt like such a dream job, oh my gosh, so amazing. I love it so much. And I really, as Oriana was saying, you get attached to what you're working on. I think in the nonprofit sector, that's especially true. You get really attached to the mission. You feel like, for the one I was working at, we worked with kids in the city and running programs for these kids. And so I felt really attached to these kids and really attached to the work and the mission. I mean, I was still working in the sort of marketing communication side. I was helping to tell the story so we could raise more money. But I felt really attached. And then, the pandemic hit, which is obviously an extreme circumstance, but I got laid off. And it was really a hit for me. It was really, I felt like, whoa, like my kind of identity. I gave too much of myself to this job. And so I'll admit somewhat cynically that when I was like, maybe I'll try the software sector, there was a cynical part of me that was kind of like, and I won't get so attached. I won't get so emotionally bought in because it won't matter as much. So I'll admit that, but I was wrong about that. I think I came into the tech sector thinking that it was just going to be a bunch of like cynical businessmen trying to make as much money as they could. And instead, I found this world at NextThink where we're talking about digital employee experience and where our customers really seem to see the vision that we're putting out into the world. And now as my role has evolved here, now I have a role where I get to speak with customers more frequently and hear what they're doing with the product. And to what Dina was saying, hear how it's revolutionized their careers. I feel really bought in yet again because, you're hearing about how this software is making people happier at work, and it's giving people a new direction for their career, and it's making them feel more inspired about their career. And it really does have like a personal impact. So I think the software world and the nonprofit world are actually not that different. I think the nonprofit world gets a reputation of being a place where less skilled people go to work. And I don't think that that's fair. I think a nonprofit world is full of really intelligent, driven people who want to do the best work possible. And I think that the software world is the same. And I was expecting the tech world to be full of, cynics who really want to make money. But instead, I have found people who are really intelligent and really driven and really just want to make the best product possible and make a difference with their work. So I think across the board, people just want to find meaning in their work, That's kind of my takeaway.
Yeah. And I think something you picked up at the top of that answer as well, which is they also want to find community. People want to find jobs where they feel at home. You have to spend a lot of time at jobs. And you have to be quite thick-skinned, as you say, Megan, not only to go through crazy interview processes and with it probable rejection and such like, but also then to adapt to completely new people and to play the game of Russian roulette that a new workplace kind of presents. Because the worst thing for somebody's peace of mind in life is a toxic workplace and unpleasant people. And if you find somewhere where you get on with people and you're going to be treated in a decent, you're going to be treated decently, and you're going to have work which is engaging, etc. Quite often, I think that can outweigh whatever material advantages you might look to gain or be offered in making these continuous switches and changes. So and that's my own take on it.
Sorry, you mentioned one thing that I think is really important. We've referred to people a few times, and I do think that's a really important element too, right? Like the saying goes, people don't quit jobs, they quit bad bosses. And so I do think there's also, it's a very complex set of factors that leads to any specific job change. And I think that for a lot of us, we may want stability, and there are so many ways to create great workplaces that keep people around. And I think tech is a good part of it, but also obviously from this conversation, having an interesting problem to work on and good people to work on it with is really the most fundamental thing.
And there's no one common situation either, right? I didn't, many people leave bad bosses, but I left a great boss, and I decided to not stay and stay stagnant and complacent and take the easy path. I could have spent another 20 years at Hartford like my friends and retired there. But you've got to, in my case, I wanted to challenge myself and get a new challenge, despite the fact that I had a really good boss. So, it goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. You can build that portfolio career and change every year or two and take the risk and the stress and anxiety that goes along with it. Or you can stay at an employer for 40 years and not worry about that. It's all a very personal decision and what you do with your career. That's why careers are so interesting to me.
Oh no. Tim's former boss was so great. Tim still worries that they're listening to the DEX show. That's how good that boss was. No, look, that was a wonderful chat, everybody. We are out of time, but thank you so much, everyone. And I think that was a really worthwhile discussion. I really enjoyed it. We will include links to the interview I mentioned at the top of the show with Sergio, who I called Sergio Sony. Sorry about that, Sergio. Do listen to that if you enjoyed this conversation and you missed that episode. And be sure to tune in over the next few episodes of the DEX show, where we will be celebrating throughout the month of May the incredible milestone of NextThink's 20th anniversary. And a final plug before I go. I know it's a long way off, but Experience 2024 is coming towards us. It's in October and November in London and Boston both this year. And you can register now. There will be a link in the show notes to check out the specific dates, the venues, find out something about what we're going to be covering this year, and get your name down at this early stage. So be sure to do that also. Just leaves for me to thank the wonderful Reality Bytes panel, Tim, Sean, Dina, Oriana, Megan, and of course, our super producer, Catherine. Thank you all so much.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.